Welcome to the Starting Over Podcast. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and this is a show where we look at strategies, tactics, and mechanics behind the game of heroclix. Pretty much, I know some of you might be wondering, like, hey, what's going on? And what's up with the commercial? Pretty much, I am having a sale of my services. Pretty much, I will. If you're a new first-time customer, you get a 30-minute not confrontation, consultation, and 2 hours with me. And then if you're a returning customer, you'll spend $20 for 2 hours. And some of you might be saying, like, well, why are you pushing this, right now? I on my way back to Arkansas, I pretty much blew out my car. The engine blew out. I got back to Kansas City fine. It's just the day after returning home from work, my engine died. And also, I'm still trying to go to Origin. So one of my main goals is just to, supplement my income no matter, which way I possibly can. So I'm trying to, hustle and get some stuff done. Not only that, I just have some other, just personal life stuff I have to take care of. And so, if folks help out, that's fine. I didn't think it was appropriate for me to say, like, hey, I jacked up. Please donate to cover for me jacking up in life. So that's a poor excuse. So brothers got to work and hustle. So I decided to have this cool sale. Definitely considering that Origin's coming up, and then the sale is going from March 23rd to May 23rd. So if you want to, experience a coaching session with me on the cheap, this is the time to do it, because you're going to get the most out of, this period of time. Because once May 23rd hits, I'm pretty much just focused on Origins after that. Like, nothing but Origins. So there's some key elements there. But anyway, we're going to get into today's episode. And today's episode is going to be about maps. And I haven't talked about maps in a long while. And the main reason is, let's just say, most of the maps that have been really defining, we're sort of removed from the meta, and not only that, WizKid's limited map pool meant that really a small amount of maps were actually legal, and so combine that with Rock, which allows you to use Rock maps, with some of the other silliness, with the WizKid's rules indicating, like, hey, we're following, WizKid's, map ban. We're just going to talk about maps, some of the implications of maps, what does it mean for, in the future, and how you can best utilize maps. So, starting off, the best thing that I can tell you is premium maps are going to be the focus of the future, whether it's from WizKids or if it's from the Realms or the Rock. Premium maps are what we will be spending a majority of our time playing on. Now, some of you might say, but for the Rock, I can get like a $5 pack and get like a bunch of maps. True. And then some of you will say, but WizKid still gives us a free map for every set. True. But hear me out when I say this, that premium maps are pretty much going to be the main thing that we're going to be using from now on. WizKids, functionally, I don't think that they look at the maps before they put them out. They're just like, do they look good? Okay, cool. Bye. And they just chuck them out there. And then once all the problems come back from the maps, then they're like, well, guess what, guys? This map is not for modern. And they pretty much just took any map with any sort of special rules or anything sort of cool, really, and just said, hey, guys, we're not going to allow this in competitive play. Yeah, so there you go. And when you start down that process, you'll start to notice that none of the premium maps, even though a couple of them have some like heavy amounts of control possible, don't go down that path. And so it makes you wonder, like, could it be that the premium maps are actually like designed and balanced for for them to be used, and they don't have any special rules on them in particular, so they won't be banned? Makes you think. Okay, so when you also have the other factor is that we haven't had a starter in a while, and we should get a starter soon. But you'll get a starter map, and I'm hoping they don't like gimp us and give us like one of these like partial maps like we got back during the Iron Man 3 era, where it's like not quite a full map, but it's enough to sort of play on, But let's just say they don't go the douchebag route and they give us a full-on map. All right, that's great. They gave us a full-on map in the starter. Let's just say there's 2 different starters. There you go. We get 2 maps. You get your villain starter and your hero starter. Okay, that's wonderful. Now we have this huge problem. Let's just say that 1 out of every 3 sets, that map is being banned. Okay, so it's not just side A that's really the problem, because it's always just side A, and then side B gets caught up too. They ban both side A and side B. So functionally, you take 2 maps out of the meta, whereas with premium maps, there's none of that jazz. You only get 1 side, so you're paying just for that side. So when you start to take some closer looks, there's some weird things that start to come up. Is your map pool for WizKids is really small, like not ridiculously small, not functionally small, but smaller than what it should be. When you take away Morlock Tunnels, when you take away WizKids Office, when you take away Speakeasy, when you take away what is it? The UN building in Atlantis map. Okay, you take all those away, it doesn't seem like a lot. It's just like 6 maps off the top of my head, and there may be 1 other or 2 other technically maps that might be removed from modern play. I can't think of them right now, if there is. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when you start looking, and I want you to really come to this conclusion, is that when you start looking at what's left, you're highly dependent on OP events. And what happens when OP events go away? Because they are. The OP events are going away. You could tell by Civil War last year that they're just trying to kill OP events. They had something in the vault, and they already knew that the stuff wouldn't sell unless it was an OP event. I mean, come on, look at half of the figures in that entire set and ask yourself, would you buy that crap if it wasn't for an OP event? And the answer is no, you wouldn't buy that crap. Okay, truth be told. So now you look at it and you say, all right, if I take out the OP events, and on average WizKids is banning 1.5 maps a year on average, then that sort of leaves me, hanging a little bit. I might actually have, minus the premium maps, and again, we're removing OPs because OPs aren't going to be there in the future. You're probably going to have a core 5 to 7 maps that everyone is using or looking at, because there's just some maps, there's no reason for people to play them. Okay. Now that doesn't seem very limiting at first, but when you start looking at all the options that we have from maps, and I would say you can go back several years, and unfortunately, War of Light is the big flood of like, oh my gosh, this map, it's so great for whatever blankety blank team that I want to play. But when you look back, really, we've had a lot of maps that have been really good for Rock and for WizKids play. And for mainly, I would say high-level WizKids play would be Nationals and Origins. Before Nationals was at Origins, okay, or even you would say Gen Con. So now, with everything sort of resetting, and I know some of you might be saying, like, when are you going to talk about Rock, Edward? When are you going to talk about Rock? Give me a moment. But when we start taking some steps back, we're going to see some key things. Number one, it's not going to just be like, what can Jakeem win on today? But once we have a limitation of like 5 to 7 maps within modern age that, out of the legal sets and all stuff that's actually viable and doesn't like screw you over or just has weird placement or whatever, you'll start to see certain teams emerge because of the maps. And we've seen this classically before. Not only that, with all the upcoming rules changes after retirement, you could see a return of non-generic theme teams like in force. And I really do mean in force. And you might say, well, why is that? Well, if we look close, one of the biggest things that casual to mid-experienced players like to do is they like playing theme teams. But if the meta is starting to be really focused on using the map is the battlefield condition, and you pay 0 points for the map, then the map becomes more important, and then having theme prop to compensate for some other elements becomes very, very, very important. Okay? And I know that for some people, they're going to notice that, like, if there's a map that hurts Jakeem in any way, or there's a map that hurts Krang in any way, there's a map that hurts Pog teams in any way, then being able to design around that map is going to be a huge deal. Definitely on a local level. When you start going to a national level, it's going to be more of generic themed teams that might come back. And the main reason I say that is that we saw this with the introduction of theme teams, and we also saw it in other classic Wizard World. And I know some people who might not know what Wizard World tournaments was, but when OG original WizKids owned the game, they used to have championship games at the Wizard World cons when they were still a thing. And when we shifted from the bigger maps, and yes, they're bigger maps than what we're on now, to the smaller, more like streamlined maps, so that there would be more combat, and so people couldn't just run to the corner of the map and like get away from you. With the streamlined map, for the first few years, they just made it so that there was one map, and everybody built teams for that one map. And when they started to open it up, and I mean, like, our format for mapping has been the same since Sinister. Like, really think about that. Like, it's been the same since Sinister. So it's been a while. It's probably been 10 years. Probably. Anyway, so going back, because I like to derail myself. Since the map format has been the same, and the main goal was, like I said, just to force a standard interaction. But at the beginning, they didn't have a lot of maps, so everybody played to maximize the maps, and that's why one of the reasons the Flash teams, the KC Flash teams of the past, were so OP, because they were designed to work on, like, I think it was like the JSA Museum map and something else. But anyway, we didn't have special rules on maps or anything like that, like we do now. But you saw back during that era how limiting the builds were. And you had Transporter Hawkeye, Vet Transporter Hawkeye, back when that was actually good. Transporter was good, not suck. You had, like I said, KC Flash. You had Lamp. You had a few other stuff. So when the map selection when we fast forward a bit, and that was the era without keywords. But when we fast forward a bit into an era with keywords, we saw the same thing. Like, people were building teams specifically to get map. Once they get map, back in the day, you had the ability with theme teams to negate a battlefield condition. So then they would negate the battle. Had like once per tournament, you can negate a battlefield condition, and so they would negate a battlefield condition, and their opponent might not be able to negate the battlefield condition. And we also had the whole ignore a battlefield condition, where your opponent could not ignore that, which caused some wonky game states. Oh gosh, so many bad game states because of that. But hey, that's part of the cost of playing. So anyway, there's going to be a return of theme teams, and there's going to be specific theme teams that will always stand out. Science, mystical, those will always be there. Martial artists came up within the last 5 years and said, hey, I'm here, what's up? Armor sometimes pops up, but it's mainly scientist and mystical. I mean, that's it. So when we start breaking some things down, the meta for normal WizKids is going to get smaller because of maps. You take away resources, even if you introduce special wonky hammers in Hammer of Thor, or not Hammer of Thor, the Thor set, or make it so that special objects take the place of resources, like I guess what they're trying to do. Unless they're going to have to hyper retire the Punisher van and also Supreme Intelligence. Not this year, but next year, they're going to prematurely retire them. They have to, because if Supreme Intelligence lasts another year, it would be horrible. But anyway, going on. Actually, 1, 2, 3. Actually, I think Supreme Intelligence retires next year. Anyway, sort of going back. When we start looking at limitations, when you start moving, into special objects and all this other jazz that's going on, they want you to be focused on getting the next set, getting the newest stuff, and then playing on this premium map. And there's going to be only so many options that are going to come up to the top after all that. Even if, like I said, even if you get rid of Supreme Intelligence and you just have special objects, there's only going to be so many good teams like there is now. It's going to be even worse. For people who don't understand what the world was like before resources, if you go back, what was it? Amazing Spider-Man at Daniel Jones' first World Championship. The meta was Metron, Bullseye, or Nightcrawler, and Daniel combined Metron and Nightcrawler together. That's it. That is literally, oh, and Kid Zoom, and the Crimson Gem of Cyttorak, because I think that and the Hammer were the only two special objects, and everybody was sort of losing their minds about, oh my gosh, these things are broken. But anyway, sort of going back, like I said, the WizKid meta is going to get smaller because there's fewer maps. Now, go into Rock. Rock has a huge problem. And the huge problem is this. The veteran player who's been playing Rock all these years, who's done well, placed well, has a buddy that's done well, placed well, and gives him all their extra maps and whatnot, will have so much of a arsenal that it's stupid. Okay? Some of the Rock maps, I don't have Crossfire Canyon. You would think I would have Crossfire Canyon with as many maps as I have, but I don't have Crossfire Canyon. I do have the wrestling rink, and there's not a lot of people that have a felt version of a wrestling rink, because that was current Rock we have year one, okay? for being in the finals. So I have that. Not a lot of people have that. It's a cool map, okay, and you could probably get a paper one, I think. It's a cool map, but guess what? Like how often are people like going up, to HC Realms and buying rock maps? And I'm just gonna sort of prove my own point. I'm gonna go to the shop. Okay, so here you go, and this is interesting because most of the time, like, nobody even promotes this. All right, so you have the 2016 map pack. That's $10. You have the 2014 rock map pack. That's $5, and then you have 2015 map pack, and that is $10. Okay. All right. So now, with the map packs, you can go through here, and we can start seeing, like, in particular, some details. All right. So let's just say you have a new player to rock. They're not going to know all this. They're going to look at their WizKids map, and then they're going to get placed on some weird map. So here we go. 2014 map pool. You have the Arctic Outpost, the Great Wall, Mayan Ruins, main event. So I have the main event map. Okay. Like, all of these maps are, I mean, they have their uses. I won't say that they don't. So let's sort of take a step in, and we'll look at, I think this is Iron Ruin. The image would pop up. But anyway, all right. So most of these people are not going to get these maps on, their first rock, and they don't know, like, oh, these maps exist, and so they're going to get put on this stuff. And most players, I don't even think most players know that you can get some of these maps off of Realms. And now it's going to be like, I do the Realms Open Championship, and I'm not aware of the maps. But anyway, when you start, breaking down how some of the rock maps are, there's a couple of issues that just pop up. Okay. First thing is, there are a lot of maps here that do promote just chilling. It's like a blue line, man. Blue line, that slows the game down a lot. Okay, and if you are not ready as a new player for what blue line can do to your team and just funnel you through, you're in a world of hurt. Like, and I do mean a world of hurt. Because, you might not be able to move your team like you want to. Definitely if you have like 6 or 7 characters moving throughout the field, you're going to get clumped really easy. And if you're not, careful, you can get energy explosion rather easily on that map. So that's one issue. The other thing that, when you start looking at most of these maps, is that a newer player really isn't going to, or a newer player to rock, isn't really going to know all the major tactics that goes down with these maps. And like the zipline map, it's a fun map, but there are certain teams that just get royally screwed, just from that map. And I know, Isaac and Ed, their intent wasn't to make, their intent was not to create something that was unfun, But there are some teams that are just not, they don't have a chance on that map. And then I know it can be argued, like, that can go for any map, and that's fair enough. But anyway, so the map selection is really, really wide. Now, here's the other problem that comes in. And this is something a lot of people don't know. If you read the rules for rock, it says any grid reality map made is completely legal. Any grid reality map made is completely legal. Now, if you look at the HC Atlas, there are some grid reality maps, I think it go back to like 2012, that if I looked at them now, I was like, oh my gosh, these are so broken. And there's really nothing stopping a person who has one of those maps from bringing them to a rock and then citing the rock rules and just be like, look, this map pretty much allows me in one turn to go into the corner. And there's nothing you can do about it. And I can have this layer of barrier, and my opponent has to come to me directly, and there's nothing that they can do. So, anyway, I know some of you might say, like, but Dark Logos, there's other maps like that. But no. In particular, there is one, and I'm not going to mention it, that I sat back in particular with a teammate, and we were looking for maps for Rocktober, and that map in particular was so OP for something that we were trying to make, that we went and just tried to obtain it, and we couldn't. So the main thing with Rock right now is that they have so many maps over so many years, and they open it up to all grid reality maps, which I really wouldn't have done that. I would have just said Rock grid reality maps, and eventually they'll have to do what WizKids does, is just say like, hey, you know, our map pool is 3 years. That gives a person a good breadth of time to obtain a map, get a map, and use a map, versus WizKids, where the only thing that you get for 3 years to use in Modern are con LEs. And I understand from a business perspective, please, like, don't write in the comments like, Typhon and Steve have to make their money somehow, and if people buy it, then people buy it. Like, I fully get that. At the same time, if you're looking at it from a game balance perspective, all honesty, I can't wait until Blue Line, if it ever does, rotates out. It is a map that I personally don't like from a design perspective, because it cuts down the deployment ridiculously for a majority of teams, and only like specialty teams can move freely in that map. And that's one of the main reasons why I don't like Blue Line. You know, anyway, so there are some problems with that map, I feel personally. So anyway, but yeah, that's one of the huge things is like with the rock pool for the maps. There's just a lot of stuff, and mostly I feel that if they were able to say like, hey, here's the Rock is going to use the official WizKids map pool plus blank, okay, and plus blank can mean, you know, the Rock maps, or, you know, any other maps that they decide to use. Then it's just like, okay, cool, that's what we're going to use, and then it allows for everybody to sort of like take a time to readjust and, you know, create a fun rock meta that's not necessarily the typical 300 point meta. So the other key element that I would say going on and just preparing for the future is save your money for premium maps, and then make sure you're getting the premium maps that are really the big deal. So I would say right now the two premium maps that I feel like are the biggest deal, well, three: Cargo Ship, WizKids Office, and the Convention Center Outdoors map. Those three maps are so strong, it's ridiculous. WizKids Office, just because of how much it restricts space, screws over 3x6s so hard. A 3x6 has to work 5 times harder on that map than they ever had to do on ranks. And I know some of you would say, how is that? Because during the ranks era, you had access to the Kurth hammer. So you could just chisel through there if you wanted to. And then unfold. Now you don't have Kurth's hammer. So what are you going to do? And then all of you are like, oh, okay, I see now. It's like, yeah, without Kurth's hammer, you're sort of stuck. Anyway, going on. But the cargo ship map, because it's pretty much just like WizKid's Office, except it's an outdoor map. But the outside, the convention site outdoors map, that one is huge because you start on elevation 2, and there's 2 drop down areas that go down to elevation 1, and there's some blocking terrain sort of in front of your starting area, which you could use to sort of hide a little bit. But the biggest thing that I found with that map is that there's a bridge that links the 2 convention halls or whatever, which to scale, like, that map really isn't to scale for a person, because a person would... The convention halls need to be bigger to scale to a person. Anyway, so going on, there's the bridge, and being on any side of the bridge and firing and having improved targeting ignores elevation becomes so dumb, because now your opponent has to go over multiple hurdles to get to you. And I don't want to break down it in full detail, but there's a ton of spaces on that map that can just easily be abused. Definitely if your opponent does not have a flyer. Like, so bad. But like I said, I think the major thing right now is like WizKids with removing of resources. The meta's going to narrow down to fewer figures, and from those fewer figures, we're going to get certain advantages that are going to come up, and certain maps that are going to be advantageous or disadvantageous to certain key pieces in the meta, and because of that, it's going to lead potentially to more use of theme team instead of min-max, so that there's another element that a player can potentially control to maintain edge. Then, like I said, with Rock, it's just like new Rock players. They don't know that they can go get those maps. I mean, heck, I didn't even know. I thought they were just on sale at Rocktober. Like, there really isn't a concentrated effort to promote the fact that, hey, you can get all of the maps. But also at the same time, retirement would be a good thing. And I know for the maps, and I know some people would say, again, hey, they have to make their money, and I understand that. Again, at the same time, you don't want the game to stay stagnant with certain tactics that could potentially be abusive, or if you see certain things on your Rock maps that are potentially abusive. And I remember the other map that was banned, Danny the Street. How could I forget Danny the Street? Anyway, so that's pretty much what all I have to say about maps, and I'm going to transition slightly into a conversation I had this past week. And this is sort of just like my, I would just say more of a personal thing that involves the game. So if you don't want to listen to that, hey, cool, that's fine. Feel free to email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. Check the link below for the shirt. And if you want my services, go ahead and listen to my commercial, and I have all the stuff to tell you, how you can utilize my services. And you can email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com to set up a date and a time for us to get together. All right, so here's what ended up happening this week is I was on, I think it was either Critical Clicks or Clicked Off Facebook group, and they were talking about Rock attendance going down and why is that. And one guy in there, he sort of chimed in. He said, like, look, if if there was some sort of sealed component in there, I know that I myself would go to an event, but there is no sort of sealed component in rock, so I don't know. In particular, he wanted like battle royales and he wanted sealed battle royales and draft. I think draft was one of the things that he was talking about. And so I had a back and forth with him, and I pretty much just sort of like came in and I said this, and this is one of the bigger problems that rock has, and I say this as a person that from day one tried to figure out how to bring casuals into rock and eventually gave up. And I said, like, the biggest problem is that in your local area, you're going to get people that are casual to come in and play battle royales or come in and play sealed. The main reason they're going to do that is because sealed is the illusion of a great equalization when it's not. It is not an equalization. And I'll elaborate on that briefly. The main reason sealed is not an equalization because, number one, just because you have more skill does not mean that you can take absolute bullcrap that WizKids puts together and win a tournament. Can it happen? Yes. Is that guaranteed to happen? No. Are the probabilities of you winning with utter crap still low? Yes. Can you have a complete nooblet who's on week 2 pull freaking Silver Surfer and hypersonic speed all over everybody's butt and win the day? Yeah, you can. Does that mean that all of a sudden that the game is more equal because he's been given a freaking OP piece? No, the piece is still OP for sealed. May not be OP for constructed, but definitely OP for sealed, because WizKids does not balance the set purely off of sealed and off of constructed. Okay? They just don't. Alright. So when you start looking at that, and there's these people who are like, we'll show some real skill if you could play sealed. And then I would be like, no, because if you look at Team Worlds, you still have most of the same people in Team Worlds that you see in the singles and also in, the Rock Championships. They're the same people, minus like Tequila Mockingbird. I don't see those cats anywhere throughout the rest of the year, and they pop up and they place, and I don't know what's going on with them. But hey, more power to them. But when you look at Team Failboat, those guys are accomplished guys, independent of teams. So sealed is not necessarily a great equalizer. If you pull crap and sealed, you sort of wasted your money. I mean, if you got the Ultra Chase or whatever, good for you. Good for you. You got the Ultra Chase, buddy. Now, if you didn't even do well, you're technically a winner because you're walking away with something more expensive than anything you would have won that day. But sort of going back is the big issue is it's like, are you willing to pay, what would normally be a $25 entry for sealed, and now it is a $45 entry for sealed. Like legit, you would still get your rock points if you won the tournament. You would still get your dice. You would still get your Connelly. You would get your hat. You would get your plaque. All the other all the other prizing is still there. It's all there. Okay, you still have to cover the cost of the tournament. It's not like all of a sudden Rock is going to have like free, sealed tournaments and you can win rock points. No, you're not. That's delusional. Okay? So that there's a huge problem with integrating sealed play into Rock, and then just take it to the next level. All right. Most people that are playing on a casual level will not travel the amount of time that it requires for most Rock events. I traveled to Little Rock, Arkansas, and technically, really, I traveled past Little Rock, Arkansas to where Wes lives. So technically, from going up and down the freaking back hills of Arkansas, Missouri, I drove 8 hours. Okay, it's just the way the GPS took me. I drove 8 hours. All right, because I drove 8 hours, I could have freaking drove to Chicago when looking back at it. But, you know, whatever. Most people aren't going to drive that long. All right, I drive to Tulsa. That's 4 hours. You know, I may drive to Wichita if that was ever a thing. That's 4 hours. I've driven into Omaha. That's like 3.5, 3. It's weird. Omaha's weird from Kansas City. All these events take time, and in some cases require you to get a hotel. Are you going to go to a sealed event? Are you going to travel to a sealed event? And the answer is there has to be really good pricing. And Rock gives decent pricing. It's not the best pricing. I'm not going to front. I'm not going to lie about that. It's not the best pricing. It is decent pricing. What it does do is set you up, if you are a player that's able to go to a Rock event and is interested in Rocktober, then it is good pricing because it leads into a bigger event that's way more fun than that Rock you're going to. And I enjoy playing Rocks. Don't make it sound like all of a sudden, you know, the voice of the Rock is like hating on Rock. I'm not. But when you start comparing what the Rock does for pricing and what WizKids does for pricing, then yes, it's just okay pricing. I mean, yes, you just look at WizKids Opens. Okay? Because WizKids can cheat. They can print LEs. They print money. Okay? They're the Fed. They print money. Alright? If they want you to go to an event, that event can be in Timbuktu and they say, like, LE, limited edition, Johnny Storm, Mr. Fantastic, Susan Storm, Invisible Woman, The Thing, Doctor Doom, and for the first time in heroclix as a figure, Nathaniel Summers. I think it's Nathaniel is the son. Not Nathaniel Summers. It's freaking Cable. Nathaniel Richards. Oh my gosh, I had to take myself back. Nathaniel Richards. Bam. And it's adult Nathaniel Richards. Full on freaking Galactus is my hero, Nathaniel Richards. Okay. You would fly to Timbuktu. You would probably sell your own kidney to go to Timbuktu for that one-time magical tournament. Just to get a new team. Hell, you would go there not even for Nathaniel Richards, just for Mr. Fantastic. Okay? And if I told you also, like, for purchasables, there's, you know, only at this event, you can get the Fantastic car with Herbie on the side. Oh, yeah. Like, most attended event ever in heroclix. Alright, you'll see Patrick Yapago there, Aaron Cantu there, you'll see, you know, Kenny Pena there with his cool smile and perfect hair. I mean, hell, I'd probably be there with my shining bald head talking to everybody, okay? You would have players, you know, come out of the freaking woodwork to go to that event, alright? So when it comes down to it, you know, the guy was like, look at what WizKids can do. He was like, WizKids can print LEs. So they can create a situation where they can have a sealed event, which is what they're going to do with their last round of WKOs. They can have a sealed event. You go to the sealed event. You pay your money to play sealed. And then on top of paying your money to play sealed, you pay your entry fee, whatever that may be. And then you're able to potentially buy a bunch of cool stuff. You know, for base cost. So, you know, what is the Rock to do? It's like, hey, look, we have money. Like, you could come and win money. And when you start putting and mixing that casual element of, look, you can come and, you know, spend your money to buy stuff you already own, that you already have like 3 or 4 copies of, because you're a hardcore player and you brought a case. Would you go and play another sealed? And the answer is no. And the only reason most of the hardcore players play sealed at the Battle Royales is because you can get Connellies. And if they were just like saying, hey, you know, here's sealed for fun, man. Here's some stuff that you get in prize support, no one would play sealed. Like, I'll take that back. They would bring like maybe 6 cases. And they'll go through the 6 cases through the entirety of Origins. That's it. No one would play. All right? So, you can't incorporate sealed into Rock. The money structure just isn't there. Like, at all. You can't incorporate casuals into Rock because now you have these casual people that play sealed going, you know, and having all these Rock points. And what they're easily going to demand is like, look, I just don't want to sit, you know, here playing rock and rolls. I want to play for some money too with my sealed product. I mean, I'm not wrong on that. And if you tell them, yeah, for sealed, you're playing for $500 for first, they're going to feel offended. They are. And then you would have to break it down to them. It's like sealed is not as profitable, just like women's soccer isn't as profitable as men's soccer. So the payout is different. Now, if sealed was so popular, like it is in Magic or some other games, and it eclipsed constructed because, let's just say the constructed meta is completely crap, then yeah, freaking flip the payout. Make it so that constructed is, you know, $500, and then make sure, you know, the winner of sealed, you know, gets $5,000. If that's how the payout is. But if the payout's not like that, then you have to deal with economics. You know, that's one of the biggest deals you have to deal with the Rock, is that the money that you're paying for the entry fee goes in part to the store. Really, it goes to the store, but the store buys a kit, and the cost of the kit goes into paying for, you know, of course, the stuff for the kit, but also paying into the cash prize at the end of the year. So you can't have this situation where you have an event that doesn't have the standard entry fee or below standard entry fee and have the same amount of prizing and the same amount of, you know, backup and the same amount of rock points as you do with an event, you know, like constructed. So the guy sort of takes a step further and he's like, look, I mainly like sealed events because the meta's crap, because it always boils down to, you know, 3 to 4 figures. Look, it's Jakeem and Krang, and, you know, I think he said something about Quinjet, but okay, whatever. All right, and he's like, that's all people play. And part of me, you know, sat back and I'm like, okay, look, you actually brought up a legit critique about right now. The problem comes in is this. We create our own hell when it comes to the meta. And the main reason I know this is that I've lived through it on my own team recently with the whole Krang tank crap. Okay? And I'm just going to break it down real quick. Pretty much PJ Bolin on my team made the Krang tank. And he made a way for freaking Krang in one turn, get across the map, attack, and throw the freaking tank at you, blow up the tank. The tank separates your team, and then he lands his crap ton of damage on you after the tank blows up your team. And just FYI for people that don't know, the tank activates when it hits, so you're able to determine order of action as the player. They ruled that recently. So you can have the tank expand first, then attack, or do your damage and have the tank expand. Anyway, so he played it. He won an event. We were like, heck yeah, awesome. Okay. And then he was told, you know, by a bunch of people that looked at his build that folks were just going to clone him going into the Chicago event. So I had another teammate who will go unnamed right now, uh, just because he changed up from a build that he was using, and we talked about it. So there's no one's going to be like, oh, he casting shade. No, we talked about it personally, man to man about it. And so, he went and he saw how strong PJ's build was, and then he just decided to clone it. And then it was like, okay, you had zero practice with this team, and you're going into an event with a teammate's build, trying to, win the event. And so the problem is that I'm, night before the event or 2 days before the event, I'm up at like 1:30 in the morning, way past my bedtime, talking with PJ about like, all right, I see potentially there's only one thing that can survive this, and it's this figure here. And then we spent, time trying to figure out what it is. Going into Friday, morning, he's practicing it, and he's just like, look, man, if I had another week, I could do this, but I don't, so I'm going to go back to Krang. All right, so it goes into the event, and it just sucks. There's a bunch of stuff that went down, dice and other things, for both of my teammates. The one guy that switched to Krang, he didn't even break, and then I think PJ made top 8 or top 4. He didn't win the event. All right. Now, some of you might say, Dark Logos, you just threw your teammates under the bus. And I'm like, no, it's just more factual history. But the issue I'm sort of coming to is like, look, PJ's a really good player. And he made something that was broken. But the fact is that once it's birthed and it's out there in the world, then everyone's aware of it. Okay? And so everyone tries to snag that DNA to clone it. And if you don't want to play against something broken, then don't birth it. Okay? Which leads to the problem, which is this. We don't really have any restraint, and we don't have any reason to restrain ourselves, because victory is not just a time investment, because the majority of us invest a crap ton of time in making teams and development and listening to podcasts, doing research and all this other stuff, going and digging for rules, that it becomes absurd. At the other end of it, we recognize how unfun some things are that we build. I mean, realistically, like I've built teams. I'm just like, I'm sorry. Like, this is just bad. This should never exist in this game. You can do absolutely nothing to me, But I also knew that my opponent had full ability to completely replicate my team the following week. Had fully every ability to do so. Okay, and so realistically, the only thing that can be done to keep the meta, with the lack of a better way of saying is just fun and diverse and creative, is to have a rotating ban. And I'm not trying to have any sort of campaign. It's like, make Rock have a rotating ban. But the main reason there would be a rotating ban is this. You would have a ban so that pretty much from December through March, you would be able to ban figures that were not from the most recent main base set. So, for example, if you say you saw too many Krangs, too many Justins, too many Hyper Spideys, too many Sinister Six, too many Overdrives, too many Mephistos, you could easily say, okay, Joker's Wild came out. Everything from Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man and Superior Foes back. We can pick a total of 10 to 15 characters, and then just block ban them for everybody. Like you just can't play them in the event, and they're block banned for 2 months. Okay, so Joker's Wild comes out, Jakim's out. Okay, so now you have to deal with Jakim's silliness for a little bit. Okay, cool. All right. Then, you fast forward a little bit, you get Deadpool. And you're like, oh, Deadpool's out. Okay, so beginning of March, Since Deadpool will be out, Jakeem's banned, Alan Scott Green Lantern's banned, and just for giggles, let's just say no, and Penguin's dead. I mean, not Penguin's dead. Penguin's banned. Okay, cool. All right, bam. All right, all that's done. You know, are there going to be pissed off people? Yeah. Okay, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, you took away my Jakeem. What am I going to do? I'm going to go back to Krang. Blah, 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 blah. Well, you didn't deal with Krang before. You know, you didn't deal with Krang before. So if you have a rotating ban, you're just like, look, man, here's 2-month block where you just don't have to deal with this figure. You can play something else. Where, you know, if you hate Krang, you hate Jakeem, you hate freaking Shredders, you got 2 months not to deal with them. And then you would set it up where 2 months before Origins and then 2 months before October, there's no bans. So that, I mean, it creates a block of six months. So you have 6 months without bans and 6 months with bans. Sounds fair to me. Okay? Now some of you might say, but Dark Logos, that would mean part of the summertime there would be a ban. So what? Doesn't matter. You know, because if we look at it, what's the main reason people play rock? Well, let me rephrase it. What are the two main reasons that people play rock? Reason number one, people play rock is to get into Rocktober. Number two is people play rock to build up the skill set to win Origins or to make top 32 in Origins. It's that simple. It's that simple. Okay? You can say, like, but the camaraderie and the building the fun and all those stuff, yes, that's there too. But the main reasons that people play rock events is to build up for Origins and to build up for Rocktober. That's how you build up your skill sets. WKOs have come in and sort of displaced some things because they're additional high reward, high volume tournaments, which have some legit value. But unfortunately, at the same time, because WizKids isn't on it and consistent and clear about their wording and clear about what's in and what's out, there's all sorts of douchebaggery, stupid stuff like what happened to my friend Dragon that I did a whole episode about. You know, there's dumb stuff like that. And you can also have freaking great events like I did in Omaha. It was great. You know? And I'm not just saying it because one of the listeners to the show is from that venue. But it was a legit great event. All right. So, all said and done, you know, there's no way really to introduce casuals into... Yeah, there's no way to introduce casuals into rock. It's not an event for them. And rock doesn't have to be all-inclusive. And some people might say, that's offensive. And I'm like, it's not. You know, you can target Maybelline to men. You fully can. And there are a subset of men that will use Maybelline. But you know what? A good chunk of men aren't going to use Maybelline. Okay? So you can have your hashtag equality for your makeup and all that. If you're not getting an increased male base, let's just say 35% of males are using Maybelline or whatever. Okay, was it really worth it? You know, and then for the guys that are, they can't be complaining like, why doesn't Maybelline make makeup for me? Well, because, guys don't usually use makeup. You know, that's just the truth. And I have blemishes. I got like some bad ones. It was like, shoot, I could use some foundation and look like somebody sprayed chalk all over my face. I could do that. But then, my nice, like, rustic beard would not come through properly because of all the foundation, But anyway, that's it for today's show. I'd like to thank y'all for listening. You can follow me on Twitter at StartOverPod. It came from outer space and told me, man, I think you might be possessed by the parasite from Xeron 6. They like to live in your upper respiratory and then poop out yellow phlegm. make you. They just like pulling pranks on people. They're douchebags. We hate them. Anyway, you can follow my random musings on there. You also can find out when a new show is up from the Twitters. And send a little like or thumbs up on the Twitter. Sometimes Twitter gets lonely. You can email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. That's startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. If you wish to opine, keep it pithy, keep it interesting, keep it, tasty or swifty. One of the two. Tasty, swifty, same thing. If you would like my services for coaching, just go ahead and email me and indicate that you want my coaching services. And you can do that in the email by writing coaching special. Writing coaching special in the email. All right. You can buy a shirt from the link below. And that's about it. I might be switching to Patreon. I got to look into that. So I won't need the blog anymore. So I could just blow it up. So yeah. All right, that's it. I'd like to thank you all for listening. And remember, we all have to start over sometime.